Okay, so I decided against this song because I had to paperclip so much of this book remaining. And yes, since I already took the time to paperclip, we're going to try and cover as many paperclips as I can. It's not even 1 o'clock yet. It's only 12:45. So I've got a little bit of a headache going on. So I'm going to take some headache medicine here in a minute and a Benadryl to knock me out after we get done reading. So let's read as much as we can, and probably, it would be a good idea to put on those glasses right about now. Yeah. Okay, so they're in their room, and she says, honestly, I would have married you a lot sooner if I'd have known you came with room service. Room service and lots of fun in the bedroom, we'll put it that way. If you have to be the one to say it, you're sleeping with a woman who has more pride than sense. Nothing wrong with that, she said. A little bit of pride never hurt anybody. Neither did a little bit of submission. Now that's where you're wrong, she said. It hurts unless you want to give it. You say that as an expert. She shot her head. Definitely not. But being totally honest, I've had very few underwhelming boyfriends, and none of them have enticed me to do the things that you entice me to do. So there you have it. I haven't had that many girlfriends. In fact, none. He got out into bed and with her and stretched alongside her, running his knuckles along the side of her waist. But I hook up. It's never about one woman in particular, so much about my desire to go have fun. That's actually vastly unsatisfying. Tell me more. She narrowed her eyes, and this better end in a way that compliments me and makes me feel singular, magical, and like a blonde bombshell. Sorry, had to insert a couple of words there. I can't keep my hands off you, he growled, more to the point. I can't keep my mind off you. When I'm not with you, I want to be with you, and when you said you didn't want our relationship to be physical, I didn't know what I was going to do with that. I think about you and I burn, Rin, every time. If we weren't having this baby, even if we weren't together because of it, it was our wedding night, I think we would still be in my bed. The frown on her face made his chest feel strange. We don't even like each other, she said. I think we're both going to have to let go of that idea because obviously it's more complicated than that. We don't mesh, she said. We seem to mesh pretty well. She poured herself a glass of sparkling cider and took another slice of cheese, leaning back against the headboard, sighing heavily. My parents' marriage has always mystified me. They don't really talk. It was really civil, but very distant, and I think I always imagined that's what my marriage would be. I tried to find similar things with a man that I dated, this kind of external compatibility. We never fought, and any time I ever broke up with someone, it was sort of fizzled out. Like I would notice it had been a while since we had seen each other, and I didn't really care, or we were still going to events together, but not bothering to have boom boom after. Or even worse, if we did have boom boom, and I was practically spent the whole time thinking about which canopies I liked best at the party, and not about what we were doing. I knew I didn't want that to be a long-term relationship, boredom before we got to forever and sure. But there was never this. There was never any fighting, there was never any passion. I just thought passion was for other people. Why did you think that? She sighed. It's stupid. Look, Ren, you know all about the worst thing that's ever happened to me. You tell me why you can't have passion. I never think about it. It's one of those things really buried in my memory. When you're a kid, you think you're going to be all kinds of different things, from a unicorn on down the list. For a while, I even fantasized about being a police officer, chasing down the bad guys, solving mysteries. Then I realized I don't like to run, and I never been want to be shot at, so that kind of takes the zip out of being a cop off the table. He snorted. Yeah, I can see how that would be a issue. But when I was a little bit older, I thought I got really good grades in math, and I really liked it. I also really liked art, and a teacher at my school, at the boarding school I went to, told me that the combination was sort of rare. She said that it made me special, that I could certainly be creative and wield numbers the way that I did. She talked to me about the kinds of things I could do with that talent, and one of the things we spoke about was architectural engineering. I was really fascinated by that, by the way you could put different materials together, marrying form and function, art with practicality. My father said it was just not what he saw me doing. He said my brain would be useful for the brand and what I needed to remember the school that I went to, the clothes that I wore, everything that I was came from the winery, which meant that I needed to invest back into the winery. I understand that. I really did, and I just didn't think about the architectural engineering anymore after that. I got my degree in hospitality and marketing, and I found that I really love my job, but I've been asking myself a lot of questions lately about who I might have been if my whole life hadn't been so rigidly decided. Do you want to go back to school? I have to take care of the winery. Cricket doesn't have any interest in it. Emerson is awesome, but she does a very particular thing. This kind of global brand ambassador stuff that requires a lot of computer savvy. She's brilliant. It's an actual very kind of skill set as the one I have. She's so good with its algorithms, but she's also great at financing the public branding, doing posts that are visually appealing and have result. I mean, I get to use my gifts at my job. It's just every so often that I wonder if I had known who my father was back then, would I have worked so hard to make him happy? I don't think you know that. The same way I can't actually know what kind of father I would have been. The honest truth is, Ren, I can get myself really angry about what was taken from me. When I do that, well, in my head, I'm the best damn teenage father ever. I give up everything for my kid, women, drinking, partying, and being carefree. He paused, working hard to speak around the weight that had settled over his heart. But I didn't do any of that. I didn't have to. Louisa did. So did Cal. They are the ones who ended up sacrificing. They are the ones who gave my son a family. They are the ones who gave him the life. Yeah, in hindsight, I can make myself a hero, but I don't know that I would have been. We can't actually know what we would have done. We can just do something different now. As soon as he said those words, he realized how true they were, and they made his chest feel less bruised. He looked at Wren, and he felt a sense of deep certainty. From this day on, Wren Maxfield, you can be whoever you want. You've chosen to be the mother of my child, and I appreciate that. Whatever else you want to be, I would never hold you back from it. I support you. If you wanted to quit working and just take care of the baby, I'd be fine with that. If you wanted to go back to school, I'd be fine with that too. Whatever it is you need, I will help make that a reality. Why? She asked. Because I've had more what ifs in my life than I care to. And this gives me the chance to answer a lot of my greatest ones. Getting to be the father that I've always wondered if I could be. I want to be a father. Everything else just doesn't matter as much. You don't expect to hear that from men, she said. Maybe not, but most men didn't lose out on the chance of being a father the way I did. So for me, if you're going to get a second chance, you got to be willing to pour everything into it. And that includes caring about your happiness, Wren. I want you to stay my wife. Creed. Like I said, be whatever you want. Along with that, I'll support you. I swear it. He had assumed so many things about her. He looked at her and seen the glitter and the polish, had associated her with her father and the kinds of things her father had done. And Creed had even imagined her to be vicious and shallow because it was so much easier to reduce people to stereotypes, because it was easier to do that than to see her as a person. Because now that he saw her as a person, he had to contend with the complicated feelings she created inside him. And he knew he had been avoiding it because something in him recognized a connection to Wren the moment they first met. He had no doubt about that, and he had been running from the complications since the first time that emotional entanglement had bit him in the butt when he was 16. But he hadn't known anything then, and he hadn't known anything for a lot of years after that, because simply clung to that anger at Louisa and used it as a shield. But age forced him to see everything with a hell of a lot more nuisance. And being in this situation again demanded the same thing. He was having to contend with the fact that Louisa didn't seem much like a villain anymore, and that the fact that didn't make the past hurt any less for him, having to contend with the fact that there was a lot of mileage between just Boom Boom and whatever this was between him and Wren. And whatever their feelings were, whatever they could be, when they were having a baby and wanted this child to have the benefit of everything his son had. If there was one good thing about Creed, never busting into his son's life, it was that it had given him a family. He honored and respected that, but now Creed wanted the same kind of family for this child. So he would give Wren anything, absolutely anything. I don't know what I want yet, she said, looking almost helpless. I'm not sure that I can make that decision while I'm still in the middle of being a big change. It's okay, he said. I understand. Maybe it's not the best time, but my offer stands no matter when you take it. Thank you. She looked at him again. For now, can we just focus on cheese and boom boom? And because those are decisions I feel like I can make, and I would do like both of those. And I feel like I can accommodate. And that was when he pulled her into his arms again, and they quit talking about the future, about anything serious. Because there was a whole lot of uncertainty out there and in the future, but there was no uncertainty of any kind between them when it came to their mutual desire. It was certain and it was real, and it made everything else seem manageable, like it might be the easiest thing in the world for them to find some way to make this marriage and parenthood work. Creed was determined in that if sheer stubbornness could will something into being possible, then he knew he and Wren would succeed, because they were two of the most stubborn people on the planet. He just had to hope they could do it without deciding they wanted different things, because in the end, that would end up tearing them both apart. Page 140. It was so difficult for her to reconcile the man that she involved with now with the one she'd first kissed all that time ago. She could hardly remember hating him. She didn't hate him now, not even close. She couldn't hate him. Her feelings were starting to get jumbled up, and it was frightening, to be honest. But no more frightening than when she came home and saw that a real estate sign had been put up in his ranch. "What is this?" she asked. "I'm selling this place because I want us to pick out our own place." "What?" "You heard me, Wren. You told me that you didn't know who you were, and that you were going in from a house designed to your father's taste to the one better suited to mine. I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want that for you. Don't want that for us." "So you put your house up for sale without talking to me about it?" "I didn't go out and buy a house without talking to you. That would have been defeated the purpose." She looked at him and was just boggled, because as much as she was coming to feel affection for him, he was still a big, stubborn, hard-headed fool. And she cared about him an awful lot. "I can't believe you would do this for me. This is your place, your ranch." "That's the only requirement I have," he said. "I do need to have property, or I need to be close enough to the property that I can lease." "Don't be silly. That would be inconvenient." "I don't care about the house," he said. "It can be whatever you want it to be. We could build you a house too, but that would take a lot of time. We need a place a lot sooner than that." They didn't waste any time. They started a house hunt after that, and they went overboard looking at places, and Wren felt giddy with independence of it, that she was actually choosing a place to call her own, one that would be shaped around the life that she was sharing with Creed, and she wondered when she had accepted it that they were going to be trying this together, that she wasn't going to leave him after a year or when the baby was born or whatever she had told him all those weeks ago, because she knew now that she wasn't going to do that there was no way, because she knew now there would be no separating the two of them. They were forming a unit, as strange as it was. And somehow Wren found that their unit didn't compromise her desire for independence. Rather, it supported it. He supported it. There was a strange sort of freedom having this giant brick wall on her team. She couldn't fully explain it, but there it was, true as anything. The house that stole her heart surprised her. It was a white farmhouse with red shutters, new but styled in a classic way. She could see how Christmas styles might have even made here, and a little glitter of a little rustic. The kitchen was gorgeous granite countertops and white cabinets, light and airy but not too modern, perfect for Christmas Eve lasagna and Christmas turkey. She loved the layout of it, a big living room that she could imagine being filled with baby toys and a big old Christmas tree. Fake or real, it suddenly didn't matter. The way the bedrooms were configured, the one just down the hall from the master bedroom that she knew would make an ideal nursery, was perfect. More than she ever dreamed of for a life that she hadn't been able to imagine before, but now, so vividly, it hurt. "What do you think?" he asked. "This is it," she said. A life that was theirs, a life that didn't belong to anyone else. "Yes, I think this is going to work." Okay, page 151. We're going to do Cricket and Emerson are talking right here, and I think we might even get to talk to Wren here a little bit about it. Okay, Wren had a feeling that was directed at both her and Emerson. "Cricket," Emerson said, "you don't have to go if you don't want to go, but if you're upset, maybe we should talk." We should talk now, Cricket said, because family is a mess, and Wren is just making the same mistakes Mom did, marrying Creed because she's having a baby, when they don't even love each other. You can pretend all you want, but I don't believe you magically fell in love with him. It's going to end like this. Big house, lots of money, maybe a winery conglomerate, sad adult children, and divorce. That's enough, her mother said. I judge myself for the decisions I made, for money, for comfort, for turning away from somebody who did love me, for somebody who never could. Wren stared at her mother for a moment, not fully understanding what she was talking about. But the one thing that I am at peace with is anything I did for the sake of you girls. Wren made a decision for the sake of her child's future, and Creed Cooper is not your father. No, Wren said. Her tone was firm. Creed is a good man. He loves the baby so much. You have no idea. Well, I don't have to participate in any of this. Cricket turned and walked out of the room. Emerson put her hand on Wren's shoulder. Don't worry about her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't know what it's like. There was something in Emerson's gaze that scared Wren, and she couldn't pinpoint why. Didn't know what was like relationships? That she would believe her sister had led a cloistered life on the vineyard and hadn't gone away to school the way Wren and Emerson had. In many ways it felt like their parents had given up by the time they got into cricket. For all the expectations of their father had been so hard on Emerson and Wren, Wren suspected that there was no expectations at all on cricket, and that the low bar hadn't done any favors. But Wren didn't think that was what Emerson was talking about, and the alternative possibility made her stomach feel tight. Mom, Wren said, turning to her mother, deciding to reject her thoughts she was having about herself and deal with her mother instead. What did you mean about, quote, someone you could love you, end quote? The Coopers are good men, her mother said. If Creed is anything like his father, he has a lot more honor than James Maxfield ever did. Wren's whole world felt shaky, and she decided not to press the issue because she didn't think she could take on any more right then. Instead, Wren and Emerson went down to the grand event hall, which is decorated and lit up, overlooking the valley below, and it was pristine glass to floor ceiling, windows, honey-colored wood beams. A huge fake Christmas tree was at the center, lit up and merry and bright. It looked elegant, perfect, and the stations for each winery were beginning to come together. Lindy Dodge, from another local winery, was there, setting out samples and arranging small plates of food. Her big cowboy husband, Wyatt, was helping with everything. The sight of those two people so very different from each other, Lindy petite and polished, and Wyatt big, rough, and ready, did something strange to Wren's inside, made her long for something she didn't think was even possible. She turned away from the couple and made a show of looking at some of the displays put up by other wineries before busying herself with fine details of their own. And when Creed arrived, her world spun to a halt. Just looking at him made her mouth run dry, made everything in her go still, and her sister's words echoed inside her still. She doesn't know what it's like. Not a relationship, no, nothing quite that simple, not attraction either, because that was not deep enough. No, what Cricket didn't understand was what was happening when a man entered a woman's life who was wrong in every way, but fit so beautifully, who seemed to take all the jagged pieces and press them together, turning them into something ordinary into something new, making each fractured line seem like a beautiful detail rather than a fatal flaw. What Cricket didn't understand was the miracle that involved in loving someone she shouldn't, loving someone who made no sense, the way it rearranged one's life into something unrecognizable. What Cricket didn't understand was the love was a storm. Wren had always imagined that loving somebody was civil, and that it was something that she could pick out, like selecting the perfect wine in a refined cellar. But no, that wasn't how it was with Creed. He was brilliant, glorious, streak of lightning shooting across the sky, a low, resonating boom of thunder that echoed in her heart. He was nothing she would ever looked for, and everything she was beginning to suspect she needed. And that need was not comfortable, because just like a storm, she couldn't control it. Didn't know how much damage it might cause, didn't know what the landscape would look like after it finished raging. Feelings like this, they could uproot trees, reorder the slopes of mountains, damage her heart irrevocably. She didn't know what to do, because she couldn't unthink all these things, couldn't unknow the feeling that made her heart squeeze tight when she looked at the man, that made her want to mess up her hair and makeup and have boom with him right there on the floor before an important event. That made her want to test all her rough against her soft, that made her feel enamored of all their differences rather than disdainful of them. The reason she had fought with him from the beginning was because she was been desperate to keep him at bay. She could see that now with stunning clarity. It was the wrong time to be realizing any of this or all of this, because she had to focus on the event. It mattered. It was the reason they were here together in the first place. Their initiatives. Is it? She's thinking. Or had it been unable to see a way forward without Creed because she had been so desperate to spend more time with him? Honesty. Hadn't she dedicated herself to finding honesty in who she was and what she wanted? Her heart felt as tender as she gazed at the tall, striking figure of a husband across the room, a different winery station from hers. She didn't even know how that was going to work. They were separate, though they were married. And it wasn't just because they worked in different places, but because there was a very deliberate barrier between them when it came to emotion. Creed had made it plain he wanted marriage to last, but she knew that he was motivated by a deep, feral need to keep the child close to him. It had nothing to do with her, and he never pretended that it did. It does, a little bit. He doesn't want anyone else to have you, she's thinking. It was true, but was that the same as wanting her, really wanting her? She didn't know, and she didn't even know why it mattered, why it suddenly felt imperative that there be love between them, because other than your sisters, have you ever really felt anyone really ever loved you? She's thinking. The question bit into her, and she tried hard to keep on doing her job, but while it gnawed at her all the way, eventually she was unable to keep herself away from Creed any longer. "This is looking good," she said. "It is," he responded. "It's good." She wanted him to say that he was proud of her, but wanting his praise made her feel small and sad, because was she ever really going to be any different? How could she ever be new when she was still just simpering after the approval, the love of a man who wasn't going to give it back? Maybe he will. Maybe you just need to ask him, she thinks. She looked at the square jaw, at his striking features that seemed as if they were carved from stone. He had been hurt, badly. But did that mean he couldn't feel anything for anyone anymore? She knew that he loved their unborn baby, that he had intensely motivated by that love in everything he did. Although he never said those exact words exactly, he didn't talk about love. He talked about opportunities, responsibility. He talked about not wanting to miss anything, but he never said the word love. That didn't mean he didn't feel it, but it didn't give her questions about just how much he knew about his own emotions. Considering her own were a big giant news flash to her, and she didn't think that it was outrageous to suspect that he might not be fully in touch with his own. He held himself at a distance. She looked down at his left hand where the ring he wore was there. He was her husband, and it wasn't a secret. She closed the distance between them, kissing him on the cheek. "I'm glad we did this." The look in his eyes was unreadable. "Me too." She didn't know if she had meant the event, the pregnancy, or the marriage. How could she feel something so deep for this man, the man that she thought she was only agnostic things with for a few months? Well, she felt chemistry with him, but she hadn't known him, hadn't known that deep wound that he carried around, the intensity with which he cared about things, and whether or not he knew what love was, because she did. He had been ready to set everything aside at 16 and become a father. He bled responsibility. He was everything her father was not. And then he had let her choose their house, sold a place that meant something to him, his own house, so they could build a life together. He asked her about the dreams she had, and he said that what she wanted was important. No one ever said those things to her. No one had ever offered those things to her, yet Creed had. All that, and it came with the kind of intense passion that she hadn't even known existed. How could she not fall in love with him? How could she have never not loved him? She swallowed hard and leaned against him, pressing her face against his suit jacket, inhaling his scent. "Thank you for dressing up for me again." "It was appropriate," he responded. His voice was hard. She could feel him pulling away, not physically, but emotionally, and perversely it only made her want to cling to him even more tightly. She couldn't help herself. She was supposed to be focusing on the triumph of the evening. A few months ago it would have been all important to her, but this she wouldn't have gotten the approval out of it, the approval from her father. It was such a different thing to be doing something for herself. She still cared about the winery. It was just that she already knew that approval of that job she'd done. She wasn't waiting for the recognition. She was good at what she did, and she didn't question whether or not she could execute something like this. It freed up her mind to worry about other things. It made all the less all-consuming, less important, because it was an essential part of her happiness. Wasn't an essential part of who she was. She did this job for the winery, but she was also a sister, a daughter, a wife, a soon-to-be mother. She was interested in other things, and Creed reminded her of that. This event and what happened at the winery was no longer the highest stakes thing happening in her world. She wondered what kind of mother she would be, and she worried about being a good wife, about her husband feeling for her, and that this was satisfying, and it mattered. But it didn't feel half as important, so potentially fatal, as it would have if only a few short months ago. She suddenly thought maybe she'd been going through wasn't so much about becoming a different version of herself, but expanding what it meant to be Wren Maxfield, Wren Cooper. A woman could want more than one thing, care about more than just her father's good opinion in this winery, a woman whose definition of love could expand to accommodate a storm. A woman who could be proud of what she had done all by herself. It was a relief, because she had been worried that she might have to break all that she was into pieces and scatter them all over the sea, bury them there, so she could become something completely and entirely new but foreign to herself. But she didn't have to do that. She didn't. She could just be. She didn't have to worry about whether or not Cricket approved of, or if it made any sense to anyone else that she had married her business rival, that she loved him, that her life belonged to her now. And she imagined it would change shape a great many more times before it was over, but they would be shapes formed by her hands and her heart, and the people she loved. No, she couldn't anticipate the landscape and how it would look in the end. But whatever it was, she knew she would find a way to navigate it and find it necessary for the ways to change it again, because she wasn't easily broken. She was strong. And there she was, trying to find a way to make her bravery match her strength. Her instinct was to continue to protect herself, but she didn't think the answers lay there. After all, it had been the strangest choice, the bravest choice that had brought her here to begin with. From deciding to join forces with her enemy, to kissing him, to deciding to raise her baby, agreeing to marry him. There was that honesty again. Honesty took so much bravery. Not fearlessness, but bravery indeed. The party was packed full of people, and everything went wonderfully. She could feel the bonds she was building between her family business and these other family-run operations here in Gold Valley. She felt connected in all the same ways she felt disconnected that day she'd driven to town and realized all these things she missed here. She could feel herself growing roots in the place that she'd begun planted from the very beginning. A place she always felt she might not be here for her. She anticipated this cross-promotion being a boon for her business, but she never expected all of this could matter so much to her personally. Emerson was standing at the station for the Maxfields, and with her extremely handsome husband Holden at her side, Lindy was standing with her husband, and Wren made a decision right then and there. Rather than going to the station for Maxfield Vineyard, she went over to the one that had been designated for Cowboy Wines, and she took her spot next to Creed. She had no loyalty to a label. She had a loyalty to this man, to all that he was, and more than that, all they were together. Yes, Maxfield would always be her family winery, but Creed was her family now. Creed was her heart. Such an easy decision to make, because now she knew exactly who she was. And I bet you think that's the end of the book. No, you couldn't be more wrong. Okay. Page 165. With his deep desire to wrap her in his arms and never let her go, with the intense possessiveness he felt every time he looked at her, and now every time he looked at her and thought, wife, his woman. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't wanted it, had worked as hard as he could to avoid it, but all that work had been for nothing, because here he was, the inevitable of Wren, and his desire for her suddenly seemed to be too big to ignore, too great to combat, and he was stuck by his own cowardice. He had told himself so many stories about this woman that he now had seen were not true. So many different things about the way he felt for her, that the way he could easily examine and found to be lies. He could tell them himself, and he had not wanted this, because intensity had led to ruin all those years ago, and because he had failed. He had failed as a father, he had failed as a man. All because of his desire, all because of the wanting the wrong woman, the wrong time. But this was the right woman, the right time. Page 167. Creed, she whispered, I love you. She could feel it, the tightening of his muscles, the resistance in his body, what she had just said, that last thing he wanted to hear. He wasn't happy to hear her say those words at all. It wasn't what she'd been afraid of, except worse, because she would hope that even if he wasn't going to say them back right away, he wouldn't resist them or reject them, that he would at least accept what she was offering freely, and that he would let those words reach him and let the emotion touch him. But by the way the muscles were taut, it was like he had built a brick wall between the two of them. A shouted rejection could not have been any louder. With a firm grip, he set her away from him, putting her away, the chill of the air feeling pronounced after she'd been cradled so close to the warmth of his body only a moment before. It was a nice evening, he said. Please don't spoil it. Oh, she said, feeling mutinous and angry. Me being in love with you spoils the entire evening, because I have news for you. I've been in love with you for longer than just tonight. It's only that tonight I realized just how deeply I felt about you. Wren, it's not the time. Why not? Why isn't it the time? We're married, we're having a baby, and I have a suspicion that you're trying to make a fairy tale out of all this. And I get the appeal because you've been Rapunzel locked away in a tower, and you seem to think I might be able to save you, or what I did save you, but it's not true. We're just two people who had a moment, and we have this chemistry, or we wouldn't have done what we done in the first place. The first time I did, I had the excuse of my youth, but this time, you and I have something explosive. We both know that. We're not kids. We're not experienced because of our age. You should know that chemistry is not love. Why would I know that? She asked. Why would I know that chemistry is not love? I have been in a lot of relationships, and there was nothing like what we have. Shouldn't you want this with the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with? Shouldn't chemistry be a part of it? Maybe it's not love all on its own, but I think definitely indicates that we are kind of people who could fall in love with each other, and I did. I don't need you to say you love me, I really don't. But I like if you would at least could take my words and at least accept them. Let them sit inside you, see how they could heal you. Creed, loving you has freed me and fixed me and so many things inside me. It's just amazing. It's more than I ever could expect. If you would just let it, love could heal you too. But she already knew he wasn't going to allow it to happen. Not here, not now. She already knew that he was going to say no, because refusal was written in every line of his body, and she knew him. Knew him like she'd never known another person, and to the extent she had to wonder if she knew him so well now because she knew herself, because of all of that honesty. She was really beginning to dislike honesty. She was really beginning to resent this journey she'd gone on to peel back the layers of herself and expose everything she was, not just to the world, but to herself. Because the one thing she hadn't appreciated about life she had before all of this was the protection she had, because she had been able to hide in plain sight and tell herself that she was doing everything she needed to do, when reality, following that prescribed path, presented little to no risk at all. And now here she was on the path she was blazing for herself, standing in front of a man and exposing the very deepest parts of herself, and it hurt. It was hard. And this was why Wren understood, without knowing any details, that her mother had chose a safer life, the one with borders and boundaries and limits. Because those feelings didn't have limits, and there was no guide on how to proceed, because Wren felt simultaneously the most and least like herself in this moment than she ever had. This was bravery, and she was leaning into it while he was running scared. I love you, she repeated. Isn't that a good thing? I don't want to hurt you, he said. His voice was low. God knows you've been through enough, but that's not what I was in this for, and it's not. Me either. I didn't kiss you that day down in the wine cellar so I could fall in love with you, so I could marry you and have your baby. But here we are. This has been the strangest journey, and it was the one I needed because it was a journey to me, a journey to us, because it was somehow absolutely everything we were ever going to be. It's all right here. You're the only person who has ever looked at me and asked me what I wanted to be and said no matter what that turned out to be, you would support me. That's not love, he said, it's convenience. I wanted access to my kid, and I want this marriage to be mutually beneficial, so you don't have to leave it. Well, your generosity created love in me, love for myself and my life and for you. I didn't know that I could love you. I hated you, and I realize now that the reason I hated you so much was that you called to something in me and I wasn't ready to reveal. I didn't want my life to change, and something in me knew that you could change it. Just by existing, you could change everything that I was, everything that I am, that you would drag out of my comfort zone, out of my safety, and I was not ready for that, so I fought you. I pushed back against you until I couldn't anymore. My life was at a crossroads that day, and I felt like an alien in my own hometown, an alien in my skin, and I wasn't until I gave it to you those things started to feel right. That's good, and that has to be enough. That's the problem, she said softly. It's not. Because I realized something tonight when we were at the party, when everybody was at their stations with their husband, and I had to make a choice. What family was I going to join? I realized that my place was beside you, but it's not because of a piece of paper, and it's not simply because I'm carrying your baby. It's because of love. And I've been chasing that my whole life, Creed. I've tried to be the best I could be, but I was looking for love and acceptance from a man who could never give it. I made myself acceptable for my father, and I lost myself. And I can't hide what I am anymore, who I am, what I feel, least of all with you. Please don't ask me to go back to hiding. Wren, he said, I can't love you. Can't or won't. Something broke in me a long time ago, he said. I failed. I failed at most important thing a man can fail at. I'm not a father to my son. I created an enemy to take blame. I wanted to blame Louisa, but now I realize I can't. Why not? Why can't you blame her? But you can blame yourself? She must have known that I wasn't going to do the job that Cal did, and she did what she had to do to protect her life, her child, but it was my responsibility to be better, to do more, and I couldn't. I didn't. Because of that, you can't love me now? Will you love our baby, or is it you feel for him or her all tied up in a boy that you can't have? Because it seems to me that's awfully convenient to put all of your emotion into something that you lost 18 years ago. Of course you love your son. I understand that. It makes sense to me. Even though you don't get to see him, I get it. I do. But at a certain point, you're just self-fulfilling prophecy. You've decided that you fail the people you love, and you've gone ahead and made sure that you will by deciding you're not able to give again, and you let that first loss decide the rest of your life is going to go, not just for you, but for me and for the baby. I want to be there, he said. I want to take care of you both. I grew up in a house that was quiet, that was half muted with secrets and emotional distance. I have my sisters, and I love them dearly, but our parents, they didn't love each other. My father couldn't love anyone but himself. My mother is just defeated. I won't put our child in that place. I'm not your father, he said. I would never hurt you. I would never hurt our child. I would never hurt another woman. I know you aren't our father, but I still can't face a life without love. A house without love for me and for my baby. That kind of home was my whole existence before. You can't ask me to make it my life again. I finally found myself, all of myself. But I did that through loving you, and this woman I've become isn't going to accept that less than I know than we can have. If I didn't think you could love me, then maybe I would take this, but the problem is, if I accept what you're offering now, then I'm going to be robbing us both, robbing our child of a life that we can have, of the home we can have, of everything we can build together. I gave you a house, he said. I gave you vows. What more do you want from me? Only everything, she said quietly, just everything that you are, everything that you will ever be, your entire heart, that's all. And I'll give you back the same, but you have to be willing to give to me. And if you can't, then we'll share custody of the baby. I would never take this child from you. She paused, considering. And you know what? If at this point you can't believe that I will keep my word about custody, then we really shouldn't be together. Wren, he growled. He reached out and grabbed a hold of her arm and pulled her to him, pressing their bodies together, and he kissed her, deep and wild and hard, but with fury. Not love. and she so desperately wanted his love because she had become through the clearing, come through the fire, come through the storm, and she was willing to stand through it, whatever the risk. And she found a way to be brave and honest. She wanted him to do the same because she loved him more than she'd ever thought she hated him, and desperately needed to know that he loved her too. She pulled away from him even though it hurt, pulled away from him even though it felt like she was dying. It would be easier to stay, whether he ever said he loved her or not. It would be easier just to stay, but then he would be still in hiding. And she would be out in the storm, alone, and he would never know. He would never find this freedom that she found, the sharp, painful, beautiful freedom that made her all she was. Love meant demanding more from him. Love meant she had to push them both to be their best they could be. She could not allow him to hide, not allow him to remain damaged but protected. She wanted him to feel a whole in the same way that she felt now, glued back together, those cracks glowing bright because they were pressed together by love. I need you to love me, she said. I need you to find a way, and if it takes years, I'll still be here waiting for you, but I won't live halfway. I won't live in a house with you without love. I won't share your bed without love, and I won't take your name without love. You're ruining us, he ground out, over nothing. No, over everything. And as long as you think it's nothing, that difference is not something we can ignore. Her dreams started to crack in front of her like a sheet of ice. Dreams of a shared life, a shared Christmas, those Christmases she thought they might have here in this house, starting with this one. But it was gone now. Hope. She just whispered that word to herself. Just keep your hope. Wren collected her clothes and dressed slowly. Your car isn't even here, he said. No, she said, but I know my sister will come and get me. She stopped. If you can't fight me now as hard as you did over the winery business, then I don't know, Creed. I just don't know. She went outside, and it wasn't Emerson who ultimately came her, but Cricket. What happened? Cricket asked. Oh, my heart's only broken, Wren said, pressing her face against the car glass in the car. Why did you marry a man you hate? Because I never really hated him. I was just afraid of loving him, she sighed heavily. Because loving him hurts really, really bad. That's stupid, Cricket said. Love isn't supposed to feel like that. It's not supposed to be that close to this. All these bad feelings. The problem is, Wren said slowly, when someone has been hurt, it's not that simple. And he's been hurt really, really badly. Next page. Had to take a tea break. Well, now he's passed it on to you, and I don't think I can forgive him for that. I can, Wren said, if he wants me to. Cricket scoffed. Why would you? Because some people are like Dad, Wren said. They're toxic. They don't love people because they're too busy loving themselves. But some people are wounded. Creed is wounded. What he has done, he decided, is if he wants to stay that way or if he's going to let himself be whole. It all sounds overrated to me. Wren thought back to the last few months, the journey that she'd been on, the one that ultimately led her here, which was so very painful, but she realized she would do it all again, every time, exactly the same, because it all came out in the end, and it led her to this place where she had decided to be brave and honest, where she decided to heal regardless of what he chose to do, and someday you'll understand. No, I'm not interested in that kind of thing, and when I am, I'm going to choose a nice man who has nothing to do with any of this. With any of what? I want to leave the vineyard, Cricket said. I realize this isn't the best timing, but I want to tell you that I want my own life, one that's totally different from this. I never wanted to be here. Mom and Dad never cared about what I did, and I think Mom does care, Wren said softly, but I think like Creed, she's wounded, and sometimes she doesn't know how to show it. I'm not wounded, Cricket said, defiant. I'm going to find a place with people who aren't. Present company excluded. It has nothing to do with you and Emerson. I might want a ranch, but I want you to buy out my share. Disappointment churned in Wren's chest. The idea of Cricket leaving the winery was painful, another loss, but her sister needed her own chance, her chance to find herself like Wren had found herself. It's okay, Cricket. You have to find a place that makes you happy, and you have to find your own path. Privately, Wren knew that it would be as smooth as her sister was imagining. Would not be as smooth as her sister was imagining. But she also knew that Cricket would have to find it for herself, and maybe Cricket would find a nice, simple relationship, an easy kind of love, but somehow Wren doubted it, because Cricket was too tough and spiky to accept anyone soft, to accept anything less than the kind of love that moved mountains inside her. And that kind of love didn't come easy. But if Cricket needed to believe that she could find a love that did come easy, then Wren wasn't going to disabase her notion. Just because Wren's own situation, no one could do it for Cricket. She would have to fight her own way through her own. And what's your ideal man? One who isn't half as much a cowboy drama as yours and Emerson's dudes. I'm going to get a job as Sugar Cup. I've already decided I'm going to serve coffee while I build my ranching empire. And I'll meet a nice guy. I didn't think you were interested in meeting anybody. I'm not, Cricket said, so there's nobody in particular that you like. We shouldn't be talking about me. I prefer to be thinking about myself, Wren said. No, Cricket said, and she sounded so resolute that Wren wondered if she was lying. I think love should make you feel sweet, floaty. I don't think that crushes should make you angry. Oh, Wren said, sure, sweet summer child. But again, her sister was going to have to figure all this out on herself, just like Wren had. And honestly, even though Wren felt like she had figured out a lot in the last few months, she also didn't know her story was going to end. But she supposed that was the real gift. She had learned through the series of changes that while chapters of one's life could come to a close, there was always a chance to make herself new, to make her life into the very best version she could, and she would carry that hope with her. As long as she was here, she could have a chance to change for the better. The hope of a better was what made one brave. It was what made one everything worth it, and so she would continue to hope, no matter how dark it seemed. Even if the realization and her baby were only gifts that she could never get from Creed, then she supposed they would have to be enough. All right, his brother's voice came from behind him. Creed braced himself for what would come next. What the hell is the matter with you? He turned toward Jackson and scowled. What's it to you? Plenty, because it's beginning to impact my life and I don't like it. You've been scowling around here for more than a week and it's a pain in my butt. Does it have something to do with that wife? He gritted his teeth. She left me. What the hell did you do? It's complicated. Try me. She said she loved me. Jackson made a choking sound. What a travesty. Your wife is in love with you. However will you survive? That's not what this was supposed to be about. Oh, your marriage isn't supposed to be about love? What the hell is supposed to be about then? I told you, it's complicated. Well, I'm all ears. And why exactly do you think you're an authority on any of this? It's not like you've ever been in a real relationship. Maybe I'm not an authority on relationships, but I'm an authority on you and what makes you miserable, which means you need to sort it all out. There's nothing to sort out. Nothing changed on my end. I offered her everything there was always on the table. I bought her a house she wanted, told her she could have whatever she wanted when it came to work, and we would set fire to the sheets. I don't know why the hell she thinks she needs more. It's this weird thing where people tend to want to be loved. Weird, I know, especially since it's never been a major priority for either of us, but I think maybe it's not astonishing strange. I don't understand why she needs it. I don't understand why it's a problem for you. Hell, you seem like you're in love with her already. It's impossible. I can't do that. Look, I wasted all my emotions. I can't love her. You can't or you won't. She asked me the same question, but it amounts to the same thing. What's the real problem here? Because I don't really get your resistance to this. The problem is that I didn't get to love my son the way I was supposed to. So now I'm supposed to move on, just make a new family and make a new life. I thought I could. For a little while, I even thought I would, but I can't. It's wrong. I can't just decide to get a do-over. I wanted to, but it's killing me, the guilt of it. His brother just stared at him. What do you mean you didn't love your son? It wasn't your choice not to be with him, not to be around him. Louisa chose that for you. I could have fought harder. I should have when I seen him around. Yeah, and you loved him enough that you didn't go crashing into his life and make it about you. You loved him enough that you let him have the family that he knows. Loving somebody doesn't just mean being in their lives every day, and I never would have thought of that if it weren't for you. But I never doubted that you loved that kid because I saw what it did to you all those years ago. It tore you up. But you had to make a choice not to make his life a war zone. And you made that choice. And every time you've ever seen him at that event, including the one a few months ago, you made the choice to put his happiness above your own. That is love, Creed. It hurts, Creed growled. No one ever said love didn't hurt. Hurt makes sense, but not guilt. You've got nothing to feel guilty for. The problem was his brother's own words rang true. And if there was no guilt, then there was nothing standing in the way, and it was all a matter of being brave enough to step forward, brave enough to allow Wren to have all of him. Even though his emotions had been savaged, his heart torn to pieces, he didn't know if he was brave enough. But what was the alternative? He was thinking. Another life spent with so much distance between himself and the people who held his heart. No, he had never gotten a chance to be a father before, not in the way he wanted to be, but he had the chance now. And not just to be a father, but to be a husband. It was all well and good to fantasize about how well he'd do those things, but entirely different to take the steps forward to being those things. It's terrifying, he said. I've been so certain all these years that I wouldn't be great at this, but what if I'm not? Well, then you're not. That's just part of life. Sometimes you're bad at something and then you learn to be better at it. Was Dad perfect? Hell no, Creed said. He's still not. Do you love him? Of course I do. Well, there's your answer. Did you need perfect or did you need a father? I'm going to be there for my kid. It's just, remember what Dad said, that he loved a woman who chose easy over him, and that leaves scars. Are you going to leave Wren with those kind of scars? Are you going to leave yourself with them? Stop for a moment. Remember what her mom said? She chose to be with the father of the girls and not the man who held her heart. So we've got a little bit of a backstory going on here. Back to the story. There's no easy answer, is there? There's no pain-proof way to do this. No, life is tough. Nobody gets out alive. Creed didn't like that reasoning at all. He also couldn't argue with it because that was just it. There was no guarantees. He just had to be brave. And with his sudden stark clarity, he saw Wren as she had been, standing there in the open, vulnerable, and beautiful, demanding, and he loved her. And he realized that he failed her. He had been a coward, an absolute, complete coward. She had been so brave after the betrayal she had experienced in her life, and here he was, hiding behind his own hurt, using his pain to shield him from more pain. But it wasn't going to work, and in the end it wasn't worth it. How could he choose safety at the cost of what could be the greatest joy that he would ever experience? He was hit with a blinding flash of truth. If you ever wanted to have everything in your life could offer you, you had to risk your own heart. Just like Wren had said, she wanted only everything, and nothing else would do. He understood that now. Everything was the only answer. Everything was the least he could offer. I have to go talk to her, he said. His voice was rough. Yeah, Jackson replied, you do. I'll return the favor when you're in the same position. I won't be, Jackson said, chuckling, the sound sharpened by an edge of surprise. Creed, I'm happy for you. It's plain to anyone looking that you love her and that you ought to be with her. I hope so. She said she'd wait. She said she could change his heart. But he wondered, and he almost wouldn't blame her if she wasn't waiting, because she had stripped herself bare, and he offered her nothing. He had rejected her. I just have to hope that she'll still have me. Wren was wretched, and no amount of trying to ensure herself that standing in her truth, standing strong in what she needed, was making her feel any better. Emerson was deeply sympathetic, having been through something similar with Holden. Cricket seemed like she didn't know what to do with her, and a surprising source of support and sympathy came from her mother. I know it's hard to believe, she said, but I know what it's like to have a broken heart. You're going through a divorce, Wren said. I don't think it's hard to believe. Not your father. My heart broke slowly over the choices I made, but he didn't break it. I was in love once, and I'm the one who walked away from it. It makes such a deep scar. I hope Creed realizes it before it's too late, because you can't protect yourself by turning away from love. You just sign yourself up for less of a life. That's why I left. I wanted him to love me, to find it in himself, to admit that he does, because if he can't find it in himself to admit it, then the alternative would be something terribly sad. It is, her mother said. Believe me, and it has taken me years to get to a place where I could have been in a long time ago if I had just done the work on myself back then, but instead I hid. I hid in a marriage that didn't have love. I hid behind money. I hid here in this house because it was what I chose, status and wealth. Mom, Wren said softly, were you in love with Law Cooper? But she didn't get a chance to hear the answer before, because Cricket came running into the room. I told him to go away, she said fiercely. What? Your husband, her sister said, her lip curled. I told him to go away, but he's still here. Oh, Wren said, springing out of the chair and bounding toward the door. Forget about him, Cricket said. He's not worth it. He is, Wren said, and when you're in love you'll understand. And there he was, standing in the entry of their grand home, looking out of place in his blue jeans t-shirt, cowboy hat, his face bearing the marks of exhaustion and sadness. You look how I feel, Wren said, staring at him. I feel like hell, he said. It's been the worst week of my life. Mine too. Wren, he said, I'm sorry. I thought I was so comfortable punishing myself for what happened with Lucas. My son's name is Lucas. And I don't know him. And I used that pain to drive me. I told myself all these things I would have done differently for him, and I made myself feel confident in this hypothetical version of me. And at the same time, I used that guilt to keep me safe, to convince myself that I never had to love again because I already had loved and lost. But I was just using that guilt to protect myself because it was easier than maybe hurting again. I never loved Louisa, he said, but what she told me was that I might not be good enough, and I let that sit inside me. But I want to be good enough for you. I want to be everything for you. Creed, she said, what you did for me, you brought me on a journey to myself, and it was the first thing I needed most. When I needed it most, I spent my life protecting myself, so I understand how compelling that is. I know what it is to live your life feeling like you might not be enough, but we were just trying to be enough for the wrong people, when we're already more than perfect for each other. Wren, he said, his voice was rough, I love you. I love you too, she said, flinging herself into his arms, kissing him with everything in her heart. I love you so much. This isn't just a second chance, he said, putting his hand over her stomach. It's our chance, and I'm going to be so damn grateful. Me too. Wren Maxfield loved Creed Cooper more than anything. He was cocky, arrogant, a pain in the butt, and he was here. And suddenly, even with all the twists and turns in the road to get here, Wren knew she was living her life, the best life. She also knew who she was, and she was Creed's, and he was hers. And nothing could ever be better than that. And there's an epilogue, but I got to tell you, for a moment there, before he showed up, I actually cried going into chapter 12 when Jackson and Creed was having that conversation, because I thought it was good as gone. So, Maisey Yates, you are an excellent author for bringing out those emotions and making me get so deep involved in this wonderful story. Just had to share that. Epilogue. Creed was the proudest father around, matched only by proud how of a husband he was. He loved watching his son grow. He loved watching Wren learn as she went through the process of getting her degree so she could become an architectural engineer. The people he was blessed to love astounded him in every way. He astounded himself because he never really imagined he would enjoy a 1-year-old's birthday party, but he did. It had been the best day, down to watching his son's pudgy little fingers smash the cake that they had made especially for that purpose. His fascination for a few months earlier with their Christmas tree was fake because Wren wanted a very particular spectacle, and May would eat fallen pine needles had been just as cute, though they had gone to anchor it to the wall so he didn't pull it down on himself. But it was the knock on the door after the birthday party that led to the most unexpected thing of all. Wren was the one who answered it when she came running to him where he was sitting on the floor with Mac, only a few moments later. Creed, you need to come here. Wren swooped down and picked up Mac, and then stepped back as Creed made his way to the door. Standing outside was his oldest son. You don't know me, the kid said, but my mom told me the story. The whole story. Everything a few months ago, and she said that what I did with it was up to me, but I thought it was time that I came to meet you. Creed's heart slowed as Lucas looked past him. The color drained from the kid's face. Oh, I hope I didn't cause any problems. No, Creed said, you didn't. I never wanted to go crashing into your life and cause any problems for you, but there's always been a place for you in my life, and there always will be. I guess my dad always knew, Lucas said. He's your dad, Creed said. He's the one who raised you, but I like the chance to be something to you. Because that's what love did. It grew, it expanded, it changed, and it left no room for resentment. And Creed was damn thankful that he had a woman who understood that, because Wren accepted Lucas into their lives with as much ease as he could have asked from her. And sometimes down the road he realized it wasn't love that caused that hurt. It was fear. But his family made a rule not to operate from fear, but just grow from love. And that's exactly what they did. From then until forever, they just loved, and they were happy. Oh, my land, I've got tears in my eyes right now. I gotta tell you, one of the most amazing books I ever read. And as usual, Maisey never disappoints. I give this book a 40. That's right, we bypassed 20 a long time ago. It is now on a 40 list. And there's so many parts I didn't read to you that I hope you go and read. But so many parts touched my heart. And, you know, there was that part in there where she's really brave and really honest with her feelings and most importantly her heart, and how she doesn't want to give up on him or what they could have and what they could be. And at that point he doesn't see it for fear, right? And it's not only fear of rejection, but maybe fear of not being enough, fear of not having enough love for all of those people in his life, and not really seeing a path in his life for all those people. But with time and understanding and a lot of family getting in between and saying, hey, you need to wake up, Buster, it all worked out. We all hope and pray for stories like this to come true in our own life. And if we're blessed, you know, it's wonderful. And, you know, I like the part too where he said he could, in his own mind, you know, make up stories why they wouldn't be together. But then he overcame that as well. You know, you can put yourself at a distance in fear of getting hurt. You can put yourself at a distance for fear of loving someone and them walking away or not being enough for them and for them finding someone better. Or you can take that leap of faith and realize that that person loves you for you and who you are. Not what you have, not how much money you have in the bank, but for the person that you are. This book was just outstanding. And I want you to read it. I can hardly wait for tomorrow when I read The Rancher's Wild Secret. The Emerson Maxfield is the sheltered beauty who never steps out of line, but now she must marry her family's enemy before desire spells her the downfall for them all. That's going to be a good story. Thank you for staying with me tonight. Please keep your social distance. Please wash your hands. When you can't wash your hands, use your hand sanitizer. And always wear your mask. I love each and every one of you. Please stay safe, healthy, and well. I wish you faith, hope, and love. Lots of prosperity in the bank and in your heart. And don't forget, it's better to give than it is to receive each and every day, no matter in whatever you do. God bless. Till tomorrow.